The scent of betrayal was sweeter than Maya remembered, like wildflowers crushed beneath a predator's paw. As the moonlight spilled across Silver Crest's towering marble gates, Maya's fingers trembled against the invitation card. 10 years since those gates had closed behind her, sealing away the boy who'd promised her everything and delivered nothing but silence. And now? She was walking back in as someone else entirely, the enemy's weapon, forged in darkness and wrapped in a scent-muted disguise that would hide her true nature from even the most perceptive alpha senses. What followed was the steady click of her heels against ancient stone, each step bringing her closer to the man who had forgotten her, and further from the girl who had once believed in moonlight promises. Identification, a guard growled, his eyes flashing amber in the torchlight. Maya's heartbeat didn't falter as she extended her wrist, allowing him to inhale deeply against her pulse point. The special oils she'd applied masked her true omega scent, replacing it with something neutral and forgettable. Just another beta assistant, here to serve the alpha court. Proceed, he muttered, seemingly disappointed not to find anything worth investigating. The massive doors swung open, revealing a world that had haunted her dreams for a decade. Silver Crest's inner sanctum remained unchanged, all sweeping arches and stone columns laced with silver veins that caught the light like frozen lightning. Maya moved silently through the entrance hall, each breath carefully measured. The rival alpha who'd sent her, Magnus of the Blood Moon Pack, had been explicit in his instructions. Find Xavier's weakness, he'd commanded. Asterisk, every alpha has one. Asterisk. Deep down, she knew the truth, she already was that weakness. Or at least, she had been. Before she could reach the main hall, a figure stepped directly into her path. Tall, broad-shouldered, with hair like midnight and eyes of such startling blue they seemed to glow from within. Her stomach dropped as recognition slammed through her. You're late, Xavier Stone said, his voice deeper than she remembered but with the same commanding edge that had once made her knees weak. The years had transformed him. The lanky, wild teenager had become something magnificent and terrible, all sharp angles and control power. His shoulders stretched the fine material of his suit, the perfect symmetry of his features making him appear carved rather than born. My apologies, Alpha Stone, Maya replied, her gaze fixed on a point just past his left ear. The protocol was clear, never meet an Alpha's eyes unless invited. The journey was longer than anticipated. Though she had prepared for this moment for months, nothing could have readied her for the physical reaction of being near him again. Her scent blockers couldn't calm the racing of her pulse or the heat that flooded her core. The bond they'd shared, the one he'd severed without warning, stirred like something half-dead detecting sunlight. Look at me, he commanded, the alpha timbre in his voice sending involuntary shivers down her spine. With every heartbeat screaming caution, Maya raised her eyes to his. A mistake. As their gazes locked, something inside her cracked open, raw and bleeding. The space between them burned with memories she couldn't afford to acknowledge. Xavier frowned, his nostrils flaring slightly. For one terrible moment, Maya feared her scent-blocking oils had failed, that he would recognize her instantly and everything would be lost. But then, his expression shifted to one of mild irritation. Magnus sends a beta to negotiate with me, he scoffed. How typical of his arrogance. Relief flooded her system. He didn't recognize her. Not even a flicker. The boy who had once traced constellations across her skin beneath midnight skies didn't know her face. The irony was a knife between her ribs. She had spent 10 years trying to forget him, while he had already succeeded in forgetting her. Alpha Magnus believes I can serve both our interests effectively, she replied, her voice betraying nothing of the storm raging inside her. Xavier's laugh was cold, nothing like the warm sound that had once made her feel like summer even in the dead of winter. Follow me. Let's see if his faith is warranted. As she followed his broad back through the grand corridor, Maya's mind raced with calculations. She had trained for this role for months, learning every detail about Xavier's pack, his allies, his enemies. But no intelligence report had prepared her for how it would feel to be near him again, like having a limb reattached after years of phantom pain. The corridor opened into a vast chamber where a dozen wolves in human form waited around a massive circular table carved from a single ancient tree. Their conversations died instantly as Xavier entered, all eyes lowering in respect. "Our guest has arrived," Xavier announced, gesturing Maya forward. Maya Gray, representing Alpha Magnus of Blood Moon. Her false surname felt bitter on her tongue as she nodded to the assembled pack members. Among them, she recognized several faces from her research, Xavier's inner circle of advisors and warriors. The most dangerous wolves in the Northern Territories. "Strange time for peace talks," remarked a striking female wolf with silver-streaked black hair, Leona, Xavier's beta and second-in-command. Her sharp eyes didn't bother hiding their suspicion. Especially after what happened at the border last moon. Maya kept her expression neutral. "Alpha Magnus believes there has been enough bloodshed." "Convenient timing," another advisor muttered. "Right before the claiming moon." Xavier silenced them with a raised hand. "We'll hear what Blood Moon has to offer." His blue eyes fixed on Maya once more, searching. "Though I question whether Magnus truly wants peace, or merely a better position from which to strike." "A fair concern," Maya conceded, sliding seamlessly into her role as diplomatic envoy. "Which is why I've been authorized to remain at Silver Crest for the duration of negotiations, as a gesture of good faith." What she didn't say was how this had been the plan all along. To infiltrate Xavier's inner circle, to stay close enough to learn his vulnerabilities, to gain his trust before destroying him from within. Magnus wanted more than peace, he wanted Xavier's territory, his power, and ultimately, his life. Xavier's expression darkened momentarily before he nodded. "Very well. You'll be given quarters in the East Wing. And you'll work directly with me on these negotiations." A tremor ran through her at his words. Working directly with him meant hours of close proximity, of maintaining her disguise while fighting the pull of a bond that, even broken, still hummed between them like a plucked string. "Thank you, Alpha Stone," she replied, the formal title foreign on her tongue when once she had whispered his name like a prayer. "The East Wing is being renovated," Leona interjected, her tone making it clear she didn't trust Maya an inch. "The North Tower would be more appropriate for a guest." Maya recognized the subtle power play. The North Tower was isolated, easier to monitor. She would be a prisoner in all but name. But before Leona could finish, Xavier cut her off. "No. She'll take the suite adjacent to mine." His declaration sent a ripple of surprise through the room. Even Maya couldn't hide her shock as her eyes snapped to his face, searching for his motivation. The moment their eyes met again, Maya saw something flicker in the icy blue depths. Not recognition, something more primal. His wolf. Watching her. Sensing something his human side couldn't perceive. "Your wolf disagrees with your judgment, Xavier," came a quiet voice from the shadows. An elderly woman stepped forward, her eyes milky with age but sharp with knowledge. The pack's elder. Xavier's jaw tightened. "My wolf and I are in perfect agreement. I want our guest where I can keep my eyes on her." The elder's unseeing gaze seemed to pierce Maya's soul. "Your wolf senses something you do not. Be cautious, young Alpha." Through the tumult of her thoughts, Maya felt a dark satisfaction. The elder was right, Xavier's wolf remembered her, even if he did not. Their bond had never been completely severed, merely buried beneath years in duty and betrayal. It was why Magnus had chosen her for this mission. What better weapon against an alpha than the Omega he had once claimed, then discarded? Enough, Xavier commanded, his voice laced with alpha power that made everyone in the room, including Maya, instinctively lower their heads. Council dismissed. We reconvene at moonrise. As the others filed out, murmuring among themselves, Xavier turned to Maya. The room emptied until only they remained, standing across from each other like strangers wearing familiar skins. Come, he said. I'll show you to your quarters. Maya followed him through labyrinthine corridors that grew increasingly ornate. The path was hauntingly familiar. She had run these halls as a child, had hidden in these very alcoves during games with Xavier when they were young. Before he became heir. Before duty called him away from her. Without warning, Xavier stopped and turned to her, his movement so sudden that Maya nearly collided with his chest. His scent, pine and snow and something uniquely him, enveloped her, making her wolf whimper in recognition. Something about you troubles me, he said bluntly, his eyes narrowing. Why would Magnus send someone so unremarkable to negotiate terms that will determine the future of both our packs? The insult stung, even though it confirmed her disguise was working. Unremarkable. Forgettable. Exactly what she needed to be. Perhaps, Maya replied, meeting his gaze steadily, that's precisely why he chose me. You're looking for threats in armor when sometimes the most effective weapon is one you never see coming. Xavier's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Was that a threat, Ms. Gray? A perspective, Alpha Stone. As they stood there, the air between them charged with unspoken history and tangled futures, Maya realized the true danger of her mission. Not that she would fail Magnus, but that she might succeed, and in doing so, destroy the only man she had ever loved, the one who had forgotten her while she had carried the weight of his memory for 10 long years. He leaned closer, his breath fanning across her face. I don't know what game Magnus is playing, sending you here. But understand this, I protect what's mine, and I destroy what threatens it. Choose carefully which category you fall into. The threat would have been more effective if he knew who she really was. If he remembered the promises they'd made under Silver Moons, promises that had shattered the moment he'd been called to Alpha training. I always do, she whispered. Something shifted in Xavier's expression, confusion, perhaps. Or the faintest stirring of memory. His nostrils flared again, as if trying to catch a scent that eluded him. The moment their eyes locked, time seemed to stand still. Her Omega nature, suppressed for so long, surged toward his Alpha presence like a compass finding north. And just for a heartbeat, Maya thought she saw recognition dawn in those cold blue eyes. But then it was gone, replaced by cool indifference as he stepped back. Rest, he said, gesturing to the door beside them. Tomorrow, we begin negotiations in earnest. As he turned to leave, Maya called after him, unable to stop herself. Xavier. He paused, glancing back with a raised eyebrow. She had broken protocol by using his name without the title. How does it feel, she asked, to have everything you ever wanted? The question seemed to catch him off guard. For a moment, the mask of Alpha perfection slipped, revealing something raw beneath, something lonely and unsatisfied. I'll let you know, he replied quietly, when I have it. With that cryptic response, he walked away, leaving Maya alone with the ghost of what they had been and the dangerous game she had only just begun to play. Dreams have teeth. Maya discovered this as she jolted awake, her nightgown clinging to sweat-slit skin, the memory of Xavier's hands on her throat still burning like a brand. 3 days at Silver Crest had taught Maya one devastating truth: proximity to Xavier was systematically dismantling every defense she'd built. With each passing hour, the scent blockers seemed less effective, her heartbeat more treacherous, her wolf more desperate to reveal herself to her former mate. Even now, alone in her quarters as dawn crept through heavy curtains, she could sense him, just beyond the adjoining wall, his presence a gravitational pull she fought with every breath. What's worse, her nightly dreams had become increasingly vivid. No longer mere memories of their shared past, but twisted fantasies where recognition dawned in his eyes just before his hands closed around her throat, punishment for her betrayal. As if summoned by her thoughts, a sharp knock rattled her door. "Negotiations begin in 30 minutes, came Xavier's voice, deep and commanding even through the heavy wood. "Don't be late." Maya closed her eyes, centering herself. "Understood, Alpha Stone." His footsteps retreated, but the tension remained. She had spent days watching him rule with cold precision, had memorized the rhythm of his movements, catalogued every expression that crossed his face when he thought no one was looking. The loneliness in his eyes during quiet moments. The restlessness that seemed to plague him during the full moon's approach. Beneath the moonlight of her first night, she'd sworn to herself that this mission would be different from her others. She would gather the intelligence Magnus needed, but she wouldn't be responsible for Xavier's destruction. There had to be another way, a path that didn't end with either Alpha in a grave. With practiced efficiency, Maya dressed in simple, unremarkable clothes, applied her scent-blocking oils, and pulled her hair into a severe bun. The less attention she drew, the better. She tucked a small vial into her sleeve, emergency suppressants, in case her omega nature threatened to break through her careful disguise. By the time she reached the council chamber, most of the pack leaders had already assembled. Their conversations quieted as she entered, suspicious glances tracking her progress across the stone floor. Only the elder seemed truly unbothered by her presence, those milky eyes somehow seeing more than all the others combined. "Ah, the Blood Moon envoy arrives," the elder announced, tilting her head as if listening to something only she could hear. Carrying secrets like river stones in her pockets. Maya froze, heart thundering against her ribs. Before she could respond, the massive doors swung open once more, and Xavier strode in. The atmosphere instantly shifted, backs straightening, chins lowering in respect. His eyes found hers immediately, a frown creasing his forehead. "You look unwell." "I'm perfectly fine," Maya replied, surprised by his observation. Xavier continued to study her, his gaze unsettlingly intense. "Your scent is different today." A shiver of panic raced down Maya's spine. Had her blockers weakened? Was her true nature beginning to seep through? "Perhaps it's the local flora affecting your senses," she deflected, taking her designated seat at the massive table. "I've heard Silver Crest's mountain laurel can distort even an alpha's perception during blooming season." His eyes narrowed fractionally. "Indeed." The meeting proceeded with painful formality, territorial boundaries discussed, hunting rights negotiated, past grievances aired. Maya played her part flawlessly, presenting Magnus' demands with appropriate deference while systematically gathering information about Silver Crest's defenses, alliances, and weak points. Yet throughout it all, Xavier's attention kept returning to her, his gaze probing beneath her carefully constructed facade. Each time their eyes met, something electric passed between them, recognition without memory, connection without understanding. As the council adjourned for midday, Xavier intercepted her before she could leave. "Walk with me," he commanded, though his tone was softer than she'd heard him use with others. Without waiting for her response, he led her through a side door that opened onto a private garden enclosed by high stone walls. Ancient trees with silver-veined bark created a natural canopy, dappling the ground with fractured sunlight. Maya's heart clenched painfully. This garden. Their garden. Where they had first met as children, where he had first held her hand, where they had shared their first kiss at 16, trembling and sweet beneath the harvest moon. This place has always brought me clarity, Xavier said, oblivious to her internal turmoil. Though lately, even here, my thoughts remain troubled. Maya forced herself to maintain a neutral expression. What troubles the great Alpha of Silver Crest? His laugh held no humor. You would report my weaknesses directly to Magnus. I'm here to negotiate peace, she reminded him, the lie bitter on her tongue. Are you? He turned to her suddenly, his movement fluid yet predatory. Because you've spent 3 days asking questions about our defenses, our patrol schedules, our emergency protocols. Her blood ran cold. He'd been watching her more closely than she realized. Understanding your security concerns is essential to meaningful negotiations, she countered smoothly. If Blood Moon is to trust Silver Crest, we must know how you protect what matters to you. And what do you believe matters to me, Maya Gray? He stepped closer, shrinking the careful distance she'd maintained between them. The air thickened as he waited for her answer, his scent, pine and snow and power, wrapping around her like an embrace she couldn't escape. Territory, she said carefully. Power. Legacy. The things all alphas value. Xavier's expression darkened. You know nothing of what I value. Then enlighten me, she challenged, forgetting herself momentarily. In the space between one heartbeat and the next, he was there, directly before her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. His hand rose, and Maya braced herself, unsure whether he meant to strike or seize her. Instead, his fingers hovered beside her cheek, not quite touching. There was a time, he said quietly, when I valued simpler things. Moonlight. Laughter. Promise. Maya couldn't breathe. Those words, they were the very foundations of the vows they'd once made to each other as teenagers. Asterisk I promise you moonlight. I promise you laughter. I promise you forever asterisk. What happened? She whispered, unable to stop herself. Something vulnerable flashed across his features. Duty happened. Power came at a price I didn't fully understand until it was too late. His fingers finally made contact, brushing a stray hair from her face with surprising gentleness. The moment his skin touched hers, a jolt of electricity shot through them both. Xavier jerked back as if burned, confusion clouding his features. Who are you? He demanded, the alpha rumble entering his voice. Why do you feel? The garden door burst open before he could finish. Leona stood there, breathing hard, her eyes wild with urgency. Alpha, forgive the interruption, she said, casting a suspicious glance at Maya. We've captured an intruder at the northern border. A Blood Moon scout. Xavier's entire demeanor shifted, warmth vanishing beneath a mask of cold authority. Take me to them. As he turned to leave, he paused, fixing Maya with a look that contained equal parts suspicion and confusion. We'll continue this conversation later. Don't leave the compound. After they departed, Maya sagged against a tree trunk, her pulse racing. He was beginning to sense something, the bond they'd shared was stirring, pushing against the barriers of forgotten memory and scent blockers. Time was running out. Soon, she would need to make her choice, complete her mission and betray Xavier once more, or defy Magnus and face the consequences of her failure. Maya pulled the small communication device from her pocket, a spelled stone that would transmit her message directly to Magnus. Her weekly report was due, and he expected progress. Her fingers trembled as she activated it. "Target security detail changes at midnight," she whispered to the stone. "Northern wall most vulnerable. Inner circle consists of 7 wolves, all fiercely loyal." She hesitated, knowing what she said next could determine whether Magnus proceeded with an attack or delayed his plans. "But something's wrong. Xavier is distracted. Sensing something he can't identify. I need more time." The stone pulsed once, signaling the message had been received. Maya slipped it back into her pocket, the weight of her betrayal sitting heavy in her chest. As twilight approached, Maya found herself drawn to the training grounds where Silver Crest warriors practiced combat. From her vantage point on a balcony, she watched as Xavier stripped off his shirt and entered the ring, challenging his warriors one by one. He moved like liquid silver, powerful, graceful, lethal. Each opponent fell before him, some lasting mere seconds, others putting up admirable fights before inevitably submitting to their alpha's superior strength. Sweat glistened on his skin, highlighting the scars that told stories of battles survived and enemies defeated. Maya was so entranced by the display that she didn't notice the elder approaching until a weathered hand touched her arm. "You watch him with more than a diplomat's eyes," the blind woman observed. Maya tensed. "I'm assessing Silver Crest's military capabilities. It's part of my role." The elder's laugh was soft and knowing. "Child, your heart beats like a war drum whenever he's near. Even with those awful oils masking your true scent, some things cannot be hidden." Fear shot through Maya's veins. "I don't know what you're implying." "Don't you?" The elder tilted her head. "The moon remembers what the mind forgets, little Omega." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. "She knows." "Does he remember me?" The question escaped before Maya could stop it, raw and vulnerable. The elder's expression softened with something like pity. "His mind does not, but his wolf howls for what was taken from him. It's why he cannot sleep. Why he fights with such rage." She gestured toward the training ring, where Xavier was systematically dismantling another challenger. "He seeks external battles because he cannot face the war within." Below them, Xavier threw his opponent to the ground with brutal force, a snarl escaping his throat that sounded more wolf than man. The gathered warriors fell silent, sensing their alpha's barely contained fury. "What happens," Maya asked quietly, "when he remembers?" The elder's smile was terrible in its sadness. "That, child, depends on whether you are still here when he does, or if you've already delivered him to his enemies." Before Maya could respond, a commotion erupted in the courtyard. The captured scout was being dragged toward the dungeon, bloodied but defiant. As he passed beneath the balcony, his eyes found Maya's, recognition flaring in their depths. "Traitor," he spat in her direction, his voice carrying in the sudden silence. "You betray your own kind." All eyes turned to her, including Xavier's. In that moment, standing in the fading light with accusations hanging in the air, Maya knew her carefully constructed world was beginning to crumble. Xavier's expression darkened as he stalked toward the staircase that would bring him to her, his intent clear in every predatory step. The time for half-truths and evasions was ending. The game was shifting, the players revealing their true natures. And as the moon rose above Silver Crest, full and watchful, Maya realized that dreams weren't the only things with teeth. The truth had fangs as well, and they were closing in fast. The taste of blood filled Maya's mouth as she bit down on her inner cheek, watching Xavier ascend the stairs with deadly purpose. Some instincts ran deeper than memory, and hers screamed to run. "Take her," Xavier commanded, his voice carrying across the now silent training grounds. Two warriors immediately flanked Maya, their grips firm but not yet painful on her upper arms. Not an arrest, not yet, but a clear message that explanations were no longer optional. With every heartbeat pounding against her ribs, Maya was escorted to Xavier's private study, a cavernous room lined with ancient texts and war maps, illuminated by floating orbs of witchlight that cast long shadows across stone floors. The warriors positioned themselves at the door while Xavier circled her like the predator he was, his earlier warmth from the garden completely vanished. "You have exactly one chance," he said, voice dangerously soft, "to explain why a Blood Moon scout would call you traitor." Maya's mind raced through possible lies, weighing and discarding each. She could claim the scout was attempting to sow discord, that it was a Blood Moon trick to undermine negotiations. But looking into Xavier's ice-blue eyes, she knew half-truths would no longer suffice. "Because," she replied, straightening her spine, "I am not what I appear to be." Without breaking eye contact, Maya reached into her sleeve and removed the vial of emergency suppressants, the last barrier between her carefully constructed lie and the devastating truth. With deliberate movements, she uncorked it and poured the contents onto the floor, where the liquid sizzled against stone. The effect was almost immediate. The artificial beta scent that had cloaked her began to dissolve, replaced by the sweet, unmistakable fragrance of omega, but not just any omega. Her unique scent, the one that had once been entwined with his, began to fill the room. Xavier staggered back as if physically struck, his nostrils flaring, pupils dilating until the blue of his irises was nearly consumed by black. A sound escaped him, half growl, half wounded animal, as his wolf recognized what his human mind could not yet comprehend. "Impossible," he whispered, voice ragged. The air between them thickened with tension as Maya allowed her true scent to envelop them both for the first time in a decade. She reached up, pulling pins from her severe bun until dark waves tumbled past her shoulders, another piece of the disguise discarded. "After all this time," she said quietly, "I'm still just an impossibility to you." Xavier's expression shifted from shock to something far more dangerous, rage mingled with dawning recognition. With two swift strides, he closed the distance between them, one hand capturing her jaw, forcing her to meet his gaze. "Maya Morgan," he growled, and the sound of her real name on his lips sent shivers racing down her spine. "You're supposed to be dead." The accusation hung between them, heavy with a decade of buried history. Maya didn't flinch from his grip, though his fingers pressed hard enough to leave marks. "Is that what they told you?" she asked. "That I died after you left for Alpha training? How convenient for your conscience." His grip tightened, a muscle working in his jaw. "I received word of your death 3 months after I departed. A hunting accident. Your father confirmed it." Maya's bitter laugh held no humor. "My father would have said anything to protect his position in the pack. To hide the shame of his Omega daughter carrying the future Alpha's unauthorized mark." As the words left her mouth, Xavier's eyes dropped to the juncture where her neck met her shoulder. With his free hand, he roughly pushed aside her collar, exposing the silvery scar that time had faded but never erased, the mate mark he'd given her at 17, in the heat of passion and promises that had proven as ephemeral as morning mist. "You were carrying my child," he breathed, the revelation striking him like a physical blow. Maya's eyes burned with unshed tears. "I was. Until your father's enforcers found me." The memory rose unbidden, being dragged from her bed in the middle of the night, the Alpha's men taking her deep into the forest where her screams wouldn't be heard. The beatings that had continued until she miscarried their child, bleeding alone on the forest floor as they informed her that Xavier had moved on, that he'd accepted the match with a suitable Alpha female from a neighboring pack. Xavier's hand fell away from her face, horror dawning in his expression. "Maya, I never knew." "Save your denials," she cut him off. "You were too busy becoming the perfect Alpha to even check if the news of my death was true." Too focused on your glorious future to remember the girl you'd promised the moon. His face contorted with a mixture of grief and fury. They blocked my memories of you, he said, his voice breaking. After I received news of your death, I couldn't function. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I nearly failed my alpha trials. So my father brought in a witch to dull the memory. To make me forget how much I'd lost. Maya stared at him in disbelief. You expect me to believe you were forced to forget me? Not completely forget, Xavier continued, pacing the room like a caged animal. The memories were still there, but buried beneath layers of magic. Accessible only to my wolf, who's been driving me mad for years with instincts I couldn't understand. As truth began replacing deception between them, Maya felt the weight of her current betrayal grow heavier. It doesn't matter now. What's done is done. Xavier halted his pacing, turning to her with renewed intensity. Then why are you here? Why come back after all this time, pretending to be something you're not? Working for my enemy? The moment of reckoning had arrived. Maya squared her shoulders, prepared to face the consequences of her choices. After I was cast out of Silver Crest, I was found half dead by Magnus' scouts, she explained. He offered me sanctuary, and later, revenge. He knew what had happened between us, knew the mate bond had never been properly broken. He believed I could get close to you in a way no one else could. To what end? Xavier demanded, though the growing horror in his eyes suggested he already knew the answer. To find your weakness, Maya admitted. To help him destroy you and take Silver Crest for himself. The confession hung in the air between them like a death sentence. Maya expected rage, expected to be thrown in the dungeons alongside the captured scout. Instead, Xavier's expression shifted to one of tired resignation. And did you, he asked quietly, find my weakness? Maya's throat tightened. I didn't need to search for it. I've always been your weakness, Xavier. Just as you've always been mine. Something shifted in the atmosphere between them, the anger giving way to a more complex emotion, raw and unguarded. For the first time since their reunion, Maya saw the boy she'd once loved peeking through the hardened alpha's exterior. What happens now? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. Magnus is expecting you to betray me. If you don't. If I don't, he'll assume I've been compromised and proceed with his attack anyway, Maya finished. He has spies throughout Silver Crest, the scout was just one of many. He knows your patrol schedules, your defensive weaknesses. Xavier's tactical mind immediately shifted to protection mode. We'll change the schedules, reinforce the vulnerable areas. Maya shook her head. It won't be enough. Magnus has been planning this for years. He has allies you don't know about, weapons you can't defend against. Then what do you suggest? Xavier demanded. That I surrender my territory without a fight? No, Maya said firmly. I suggest you let me complete my mission, with a crucial modification. Xavier's brow furrowed. What modification? I'll tell Magnus I've discovered your weakness, she explained, her mind racing ahead with the dangerous plan forming in her thoughts. I'll give him exactly what he wants, the perfect opportunity to strike. Except it won't be perfect at all. It will be a trap. Understanding dawned in Xavier's eyes, followed swiftly by suspicion. Why would you betray Magnus for me? After everything that happened? The question pierced directly to the heart of what Maya had been avoiding since her arrival at Silver Crest. Why indeed? After a decade of nursing her hatred, planning her revenge, why was she now contemplating risking everything to save the man who had forgotten her? Because despite everything, she admitted, the words feeling like glass in her throat, the mate bond never truly broke. Not for me. Silence fell between them, heavy with possibilities both beautiful and terrible. Xavier took a step toward her, then another, until he stood directly before her once more. This time, when his hand rose to her face, his touch was gentle, tracing the contours of her cheekbone as if relearning something precious. Nor for me, he confessed. Even without conscious memory, I've spent 10 years feeling like part of my soul was missing. As their gazes locked, the world beyond the study ceased to exist. There was only this moment, this breath, this fragile rebuilding of trust between two souls that had once been halves of a whole. If we do this, Xavier said softly, if we trap Magnus using your information, he'll know you betrayed him. You'll never be safe. Maya's smile was sad but determined. I haven't been safe since the day I met you, Xavier Stone. Why start now? Something fierce and protective flashed in his eyes. His hands framed her face with a gentleness that belied his strength, thumbs brushing along her jawline. I lost you once through ignorance and family manipulation. I won't lose you again. Time suspended as he lowered his head, his intent clear in the heated look that transformed his features. Maya had a heartbeat to decide, to push him away or to surrender to the inevitable pull that had brought them full circle. The moment their lips met, 10 years of separation collapsed like a dam breaking. The kiss wasn't gentle, it couldn't be, not with a decade of loss and longing behind it. Xavier's mouth claimed hers with desperate hunger, and Maya responded with equal fervor, her fingers threading through his hair, pulling him closer. Their scents mingled and merged, omega and alpha, as nature intended. The mate bond, suppressed for so long, flared to life between them with staggering intensity. Every touch, every breath seemed to mend something long broken inside them both. When they finally broke apart, breathless and trembling, Xavier rested his forehead against hers. We'll face Magnus together, he vowed. No more secrets between us. Maya nodded, though a sliver of doubt remained lodged in her heart. One final secret lingered, too dangerous to voice even now. The message stone in her pocket had transmitted more than she'd admitted, locations of Silver Crest's weapons caches, patrol routes, the names of packmates who could be turned. If Magnus had already acted on that information, her plan might be too late. But as Xavier's arms encircled her, pulling her against the solid warmth of his chest, Maya allowed herself to hope. Perhaps this time, they could rewrite their story. Perhaps this time, fate would be kinder. Outside the study, the captured scout had escaped his bonds, slipping through shadows toward the northern wall. In his hand, he clutched a message stone identical to Maya's, its surface pulsing with an urgent communication from Magnus, proceed with the attack. Tonight. As moonlight bathed Silver Crest in silver, two broken souls found their way back to each other within stone walls, unaware that beyond the territory's borders, an army of blood moon wolves was advancing through the darkness, teeth bared, eyes glowing with the promise of bloodshed and conquest. The war Maya had hoped to prevent was already beginning. And as she clung to Xavier, breathing in his scent, recommitting it to memory, she knew that by morning, everything would change again, for better or for worse. Blood has a voice, it whispers of betrayal, screams of sacrifice, and sings of redemption. Maya learned this truth as crimson rivulets trailed down her arms, staining the ancient stone beneath her knees while Magnus smiled above her, victorious. I always knew you'd choose him in the end, the rival Alpha said, circling her kneeling form like a predator savoring its prey's final moments. It made you the perfect bait. Dawn had broken over Silver Crest just hours earlier, revealing a nightmare Maya hadn't anticipated. While she and Xavier had rekindled their bond, Magnus had sprung a trap far more elaborate than anyone could have imagined, one that had been years, not months, in the making. The attack hadn't come from outside the walls as expected. It had erupted from within. Silver Crest warriors who had been secretly loyal to Magnus for years, council members bought with promises of power, servants who had methodically poisoned the pack's water supply with a toxin that weakened shifter abilities. By the time the sun rose, half of Xavier's fighters were incapacitated, and Magnus' forces had breached the inner sanctum of Silver Crest. Xavier himself had been captured while attempting to evacuate the pack's pups and elders through ancient tunnels beneath the territory. Which led to this moment, Maya on her knees in the Great Hall, surrounded by fallen Silver Crest warriors, Magnus' triumph complete except for one final act of vengeance. "He doesn't deserve your loyalty," Magnus continued, voice deceptively gentle as he wiped his bloody dagger on his sleeve. "Xavier's father had your child killed, had you cast out to die. And Xavier himself? He forgot you existed." Maya lifted her chin, defiant despite the gash across her cheek that stung with every expression. "He didn't forget. His memories were taken from him." Magnus' laugh was cold. "A convenient excuse for a man who abandoned you the moment a better opportunity arose." "Where is he?" Maya demanded, struggling against the chains that bound her wrists. Unlike ordinary restraints, these were forged with silver alloy, painful to shifter skin, preventing transformation. As if in answer, the massive doors to the Great Hall swung open. Four of Magnus' most brutal warriors dragged Xavier in, his body battered but his eyes burning with rage as he took in the scene before him, Maya bleeding, Silver Crest conquered, his pack subdued. "The Great Alpha Stone," Magnus announced with theatrical flourish. Brought to his knees by the Omega he discarded. "Poetic, wouldn't you say?" Xavier's gaze locked with Maya's across the hall, communicating volumes in a single look. No accusation resided there, only concern for her and deep, abiding regret. "This was never her plan," Xavier said, his voice hoarse but strong. "Maya came to me. She warned me." "Too little, too late," Magnus replied, gesturing around the blood-streaked hall. "She served her purpose, providing me with critical information for years while she prepared for this moment. Information that let me plant my people throughout your territory, infiltrate your ranks, identify your vulnerabilities." Maya's heart constricted painfully. The deception ran deeper than she'd known. Magnus had used her, yes, but he'd never truly needed her final report, her proximity to Xavier in these last days. He'd been patient, methodical, using her intelligence to build something far more insidious than a frontal assault. "Why?" Maya asked, the question directed at Magnus but her eyes never leaving Xavier's. "If you had this planned all along, why send me here?" Magnus circled behind her, resting his hands on her shoulders in a possessive gesture that made Xavier strain against his captors, a growl building in his chest. "Because I needed his focus split," Magnus explained. "I needed his wolf distracted, his instincts confused by the presence of his mate. And, his grip tightened painfully, I needed him to watch as I take everything from him, including you." The threat hung in the air, its implications clear. Xavier's response was immediate and primal, his body convulsing as he fought to shift despite the silver-laced restraints binding him. "Touch her again," Xavier snarled, "and there won't be a corner of this earth where you can hide from me." Maya felt Magnus stiffen behind her. For all his planning, he hadn't anticipated the sheer ferocity of a reunited mate bond. Even wounded, outnumbered, and bound, Xavier radiated lethal promise. Magnus recovered quickly, his fingers digging into Maya's shoulders. Bold words from a defeated alpha. "Perhaps a demonstration of your new reality is in order." He yanked Maya to her feet, one arm wrapping around her waist while his other hand produced a ceremonial dagger, the kind used in pack-claiming rituals. Maya recognized it instantly. The blade was designed to sever pack bonds, to remove one wolf's allegiance and transfer it to another. "No!" Xavier roared, his struggles intensifying until blood streamed from his wrists where the silver chains cut into his flesh. Magnus pressed the blade to Maya's throat, just below her ear. "She was never truly yours, Xavier. Not officially. No pack ceremony, no public claiming. Just a teenage mistake neither of your families acknowledged." His smile was cruel as he addressed Maya. "He never fought for you. Never came looking. You owe him nothing." The blade bit into her skin, drawing a thin line of blood. Maya didn't flinch, her eyes remaining locked with Xavier's. "You're wrong," she said quietly. "He's fighting for me now." Something shifted in Xavier's expression, determination replacing rage, calculation replacing desperation. With subtle movements, he tested his restraints again, but differently this time, assessing rather than struggling blindly. Maya understood immediately. 10 years apart hadn't diminished their ability to communicate without words. Xavier had a plan, and he needed her to create a distraction. "You want to know why I went back to him?" Maya asked, turning her head slightly to address Magnus, drawing his attention away from Xavier. "Despite everything that happened?" Magnus' grip loosened slightly, curiosity momentarily overriding caution. "Enlighten me." "Because a true mate bond can't be broken," she said. "Not by time, not by distance, not by betrayal. The moment I stepped back into Silver Crest, my body recognized what my mind wanted to deny. I never stopped being his." As she spoke, Maya subtly shifted her weight, pressing back against Magnus as if seeking support. The movement brought her bound hands into contact with the message stone still in his pocket, the mate to the one she'd used to communicate with him all these years. "Pretty words," Magnus scoffed. "But they won't save him. Or you." Maya's fingers closed around the stone, her touch activating its connection to every similar stone among Magnus' forces. "They weren't meant to," she whispered. "This was." With all her remaining strength, Maya crushed the stone in her palm, releasing the energy stored within it. A piercing frequency erupted, audible only to those connected to the communication network, Magnus and his commanders. The sound drove them to their knees, hands clutching their ears in agony. In the moment of chaos, Xavier made his move. The silver chains that had seemed to hold him weakened suddenly, their links shattering as he summoned the full strength of his alpha power, a strength he'd been carefully conserving, feigning greater injury than he'd sustained. What followed was a blur of violence and precision. Xavier moved through Magnus' distracted forces like a vengeful spirit, each blow calculated and devastating. Maya broke free from Magnus' faltering grip, smashing her bound wrists into his face with enough force to send him staggering backward. "The tunnels!" Xavier shouted to her as he dispatched 2 more of Magnus' warriors. "My people are regrouping there." Maya hesitated, unwilling to leave him. "Xavier." "Go," he commanded, his eyes flashing alpha red. "Lead them. I'll finish this." The authority in his voice triggered her instinctive response to her alpha, but it was the trust behind his command that truly moved her. He wasn't sending her away to protect her, he was entrusting her with his pack's survival. Maya backed toward the hidden entrance, watching as Xavier squared off against Magnus, who had recovered enough to draw his ceremonial blade once more. "You think this changes anything?" Magnus snarled, circling Xavier warily. "My forces still control your territory. Your pack is still scattered, weakened. Xavier's smile was terrifying in its calm certainty. You've made two critical mistakes, Magnus. First, you underestimated the loyalty of my pack. He gestured to where several of Magnus' supposed converts lay dead, Silver Crest medallions clutched in their hands, double agents who had turned on Magnus' forces at the first opportunity. And second? Magnus demanded, his confidence visibly wavering. You hurt my mate, Xavier replied simply. The fight that followed would enter pack legend, two alphas locked in combat, their wolves emerging partially even in human form, claws extending, teeth sharpening, movements becoming increasingly primal as they battled for dominance. Maya reached the tunnel entrance, her heart torn between her duty to the pack and her desperate need to remain at Xavier's side. Through the narrow opening, she could see Silver Crest wolves waiting in the shadows, wounded but ready to fight. He needs us, Maya told them, authority filling her voice despite her status as an Omega. Magnus' forces are in disarray. We strike now. The elder stepped forward from the group, her blind eyes somehow finding Maya's face unerringly. Lead us, Luna. The title, reserved for an alpha's mate, the female leader of a pack, struck Maya like a physical blow. Despite everything, these wolves recognized her position, accepted her authority. With renewed purpose, Maya guided the remaining Silver Crest warriors through the hidden passages, emerging at strategic points throughout the territory. The battle that had seemed lost at dawn turned with the midday sun, as Magnus' forces found themselves attacked from within by wolves they thought subdued. Maya fought her way back to the Great Hall, desperate to reach Xavier. What she found there stopped her in her tracks. The massive chamber had been transformed by combat, furniture shattered, ancient tapestries torn from walls, stone floors cracked from the force of bodies thrown against them. In the center stood Xavier, breathing heavily, blood-streaked but unbowed. At his feet lay Magnus, throat exposed in the ultimate submission gesture. Yield, Xavier commanded, his voice resonating with alpha power. Magnus' eyes darted to Maya as she entered, a final desperate calculation visible in their depths. She'll never be safe, he gasped. Not while I live. Not while those who served me still draw breath. Are you prepared for that burden, Xavier Stone? To spend every moment looking over your shoulder, waiting for the attack that will take her from you again? Xavier's expression hardened. You mistake my mercy for weakness. His clawed hand descended to Magnus' throat, not to kill but to mark, a deep, permanent scar that would brand him as outcast among all packs. You will live with your defeat, Magnus. You will watch as Silver Crest flourishes. You will know that every day you draw breath is because I permitted it. The ritual words of pack judgment fell from Xavier's lips in the ancient language of wolves, sealing Magnus' fate more surely than death would have. By sundown, the rival Alpha and his surviving forces were expelled from Silver Crest territory, their pack bonds severed, their status reduced to lone wolves, the most feared fate in their society. As the last of Magnus' defeated warriors disappeared into the forest, Xavier turned to Maya, still standing in the doorway of the Great Hall. The distance between them seemed both infinite and non-existent, 10 years of separation distilled into a handful of steps. You came back, he said simply, his voice rough with emotion. Maya crossed to him slowly, her body aching from battle but her spirit lighter than it had been in a decade. I never truly left, she replied. Part of me has always been here, waiting. When they finally stood before each other, neither moved to touch. The air between them hummed with possibility and unspoken questions. What happens now? Maya asked, giving voice to the uncertainty that lingered despite their victory. Xavier's gaze traveled over her face, cataloging every scratch, every mark that the day's battle had left upon her. His hand rose, fingers hovering just above the wound on her cheek without touching it. Now, he said, we heal. The pack. The territory. His eyes locked with hers, vulnerability plain in their blue depths. Ourselves. And us? Maya pressed, needing to hear the words. Xavier's hand finally made contact, cupping her cheek with infinite gentleness. There has always been in us, Maya. Even when I couldn't remember your face, my wolf remembered your soul. Around them, Silver Crest pack members began to filter into the great hall, bearing their wounded, assessing the damage to their ancestral home. They moved with purpose but gave their alpha and his mate a respectful distance, understanding that something profound was unfolding. We have a second chance, Xavier continued, his voice low and meant only for her. If you want it. Maya leaned into his touch, the years of anger and betrayal melting beneath the simple truth that had persisted through all their trials. They belonged to each other, had always belonged to each other. I want it, she whispered. I want you. I want us. The kiss that followed was different from their desperate reunion the night before. This was gentle, healing, a promise rather than a reclamation. Xavier's arms encircled her waist, drawing her against him as if she were something infinitely precious. When they separated, the pack had gathered in a loose circle around them, waiting. The elder stepped forward once more, her weathered hands extended. The circle breaks, the circle reforms, she intoned, the ritual words ancient and powerful. What was severed is rejoined. What was lost is found. Xavier took Maya's hand, intertwining their fingers as they faced the elder together. She is mine, he declared, the traditional response falling from his lips. And I am hers. Then let it be known, the elder continued, from this moon to the last, that the Alpha and his Luna stand as one. The pack bears witness. A chorus of howls rose in response, human throats carrying wolf voices to the sky above Silver Crest. Maya felt tears spring to her eyes as Xavier turned to her once more, his forehead coming to rest against hers in the most intimate gesture their kind shared. No more forgotten promises, he whispered. No more lost years. As twilight descended on Silver Crest, painting the battle-scarred territory in shades of purple and gold, Maya and Xavier stood at its heart, two halves of a whole finally reunited, their bond stronger for having been tested by time, deception, and blood. The path ahead would not be easy. Magnus' threats lingered, territories would need to be secured, alliances reformed. But for the first time in 10 years, Maya looked to the future without fear shadowing her heart. She had returned to Silver Crest as an enemy's weapon, only to discover she had always been its greatest protection, the forgotten Omega who had become the Alpha's only weakness, and ultimately, his greatest strength. Scars tell stories that lips dare not speak, and as Maya stood naked beneath the ceremonial waterfall, silver moonlight illuminating the map of her suffering etched across her skin, Xavier finally understood the true cost of their separation. 3 moons had passed since Magnus' defeat. Silver Crest was healing, wounded warriors regaining strength, infiltrators rooted out, defenses rebuilt stronger than before. But the deepest wounds were those that remained unseen, carried in hearts rather than flesh. On this night, the claiming moon, when mates officially bound themselves before the pack, Maya and Xavier would either heal those invisible wounds or find them too deep to mend. Maya closed her eyes as the sacred waters cascaded over her shoulders, washing away the ceremonial ash that had covered her body. Each rivulet traced the network of scars that told her story, the jagged line across her abdomen from the night she lost their child, the circular burns on her shoulders from Magnus' loyalty tests, the thin white marks across her back from her years in exile. From his position at the edge of the sacred pool, Xavier watched her ritual cleansing with reverence and heartache. As her alpha and mate-to-be, he alone was permitted to witness this private moment. The moonlight caught the water droplets clinging to her skin, transforming them into diamonds that outlined each mark of her suffering. "I would take them from you if I could," he said, his voice barely audible above the rushing water. Maya opened her eyes, meeting his gaze across the misty space between them. "I wouldn't let you," she replied. "They're mine to carry. They're the map that led me back to you." As the final traces of ceremonial ash disappeared into the swirling waters, Maya stepped from beneath the waterfall, her chin held high. No Omega in their history had ever entered the claiming ceremony bearing such marks of survival. Tradition dictated that mates come to each other pure, unmarred. Yet as Xavier extended his hand to help her from the pool, his eyes held nothing but pride. "You honor me with your scars," he said, the ritual words transformed by the emotion in his voice. "You honor our pack with your strength." Maya's fingers entwined with his, water dripping between their joined hands. "As you honor me with your protection," she responded, completing the ancient exchange. "As you honor our pack with your leadership." Together they walked the moonlit path leading from the sacred pool to the ceremonial clearing where Silver Crest waited. The way was lined with luminous stones that had absorbed daylight, now releasing it in a soft blue glow that lit their steps. Neither spoke, the time for words would come later, before witnesses. At the clearing's edge, Xavier reluctantly released her hand. Tradition demanded they enter separately, approaching the ceremonial circle from opposite directions. Only if both arrived simultaneously would the bond be considered blessed by fate. "Until moonrise," he murmured, lifting her hand to his lips before disappearing into the forest's shadows. Maya stood alone, wrapped in nothing but ceremonial silks the color of midnight. The breeze carried the sense of her pack, familiar and new all at once. For 10 years, she had belonged nowhere, to no one. Now she was about to be claimed before witnesses, her place in Silver Crest permanently sealed. Fear fluttered beneath her ribs. Not of Xavier, never of him. But of belonging again, of allowing herself to trust in permanence when life had taught her everything could be taken in a heartbeat. "Are you prepared, child?" Maya turned to find the elder emerging from between ancient trees, her blind eyes somehow finding Maya's face unerringly. "I don't know," Maya admitted, the confession easier in darkness. "After everything, how can I be sure this won't be taken from me too?" The elder's weathered hand found hers with surprising accuracy. "Because this time, you fight for it together. The strongest bonds are those forged in fire, tempered by tears." Maya squeezed the old woman's fingers. "And if I fail them? The pack has already suffered because of me, because of what Magnus—" "Stop," the elder interrupted firmly. "You were a weapon pointed at Silver Crest's heart, yes. But in the crucial moment, you became its shield instead." She tapped Maya's chest. "Remember that when doubt whispers to your wolf. You chose pack over vengeance. That is the essence of Luna." A horn sounded in the distance, the signal that moonrise approached. The elder stepped back, her expression softening. "The circle awaits its Luna," she said. "Go claim your mate, Maya Morgan. Go claim your destiny." With those words echoing in her mind, Maya began her approach to the ceremonial circle. Each step carried her further from the lost, vengeful creature Magnus had cultivated and closer to the woman, the Luna, she was choosing to become. The clearing opened before her, a perfect circle of ancient stones surrounded by hundreds of Silver Crest wolves. Their eyes gleamed in the darkness, some human, some partially shifted, all watching with solemn attention as she entered the sacred space. Across the clearing, Xavier appeared simultaneously, timing his entrance perfectly with hers. He too wore only ceremonial silks, the dark fabric emphasizing the power contained in his form. Unlike Maya, his scars were few but significant, each one acquired in protection of his pack. As they approached the circle's center, a hush fell over the assembled wolves. Even the forest seemed to hold its breath, the usual night sounds fading to silence. At the circle's heart stood a stone altar bearing the pack's artifacts, the Alpha's ceremonial dagger, the Luna's silver chalice, and between them, the binding cord woven from the fur of every Alpha and Luna throughout Silver Crest's long history. The elder stepped forward, taking her place behind the altar. Though blind in human form, her connection to the pack spirits made her the only suitable witness to lead the ceremony. "We gather beneath the claiming moon," she began, her voice carrying easily to every ear, "to witness the binding of Alpha and Luna, of soul to soul, of present to future." Xavier and Maya stood before her, close enough to feel each other's warmth yet not touching, not yet. "Xavier Stone, Alpha of Silver Crest," the elder continued, "you come to claim this Omega as your mate. Speak your intent before your pack in the moon." Xavier's gaze never left Maya's face as he spoke the ancient words, infusing them with meaning that transcended tradition. "I come to claim what has always been mine," he said, voice rich with emotion. "To protect what was once lost. To honor what has endured." Murmurs of approval rippled through the assembled wolves. The elder turned to Maya. "Maya Morgan, Omega of no pack, you come to be claimed by this Alpha. Speak your intent before his pack in the moon." Maya took a steadying breath, her response deviating slightly from tradition, a risk, but one she felt compelled to take. "I come not to be claimed," she said clearly, sensing Xavier's momentary tension, "but to claim in return. To protect what is now mine. To build what will endure." A collective intake of breath whispered through the clearing. No Omega had ever claimed an Alpha in return, it was not the way of their kind. Yet Xavier's expression transformed from surprise to profound pride, his eyes glowing alpha-red with approval. And consuming. 10 years of separation, of longing, of believing the other lost forever combusted in a single touch. Xavier's arms encircled her, lifting her against his chest as her legs wrapped around his waist. They sank onto the furs together, hands exploring, rediscovering territories once familiar and now changed by time and experience. Each touch was both memory and discovery, both homecoming and adventure. "I remember," Xavier breathed against her skin as his lips traced the column of her throat, finding the faded mark he'd left so many years ago. "I remember everything now." Maya arched beneath him, her body responding to his touch as if no time had passed at all. "Show me," she commanded softly. "Show me what you remember." His smile against her skin held the mischief of the boy he'd once been, combined with the confident mastery of the man he'd become. "I remember," he murmured, his hands mapping the curves of her body, "that you always made the most exquisite sounds when I touched you here." His fingers found the sensitive spot at the small of her back that made her gasp, just as it had when they were teenagers discovering each other for the first time. "And here," he continued, his mouth tracking lower, across her collarbone and between her breasts, "you would always tremble." Maya's fingers threaded through his hair, guiding him even as she surrendered to the sensations he awakened. "And I remember," she whispered, "that you were always impatient." His laugh was warm against her skin. "Not tonight," he promised, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "Tonight we have all the time in the world." As the moon reached its zenith above the sacred den, their bodies joined in the most ancient of dances, Alpha and Omega, perfectly matched, perfectly balanced. Where once there had been desperation and teenage urgency, now there was deliberate passion and profound connection. When the moment came for the claiming bite, the renewal of their mate bond, Xavier hesitated, his mouth poised above the juncture where her neck met her shoulder. Are you certain? He asked, his voice rough with desire but his eyes clear with love. Once done, this can never be undone. Not by distance, not by magic, not by death itself. Maya's hand cupped the back of his neck, her eyes never leaving his. I have spent 10 years as half a soul, she told him. I choose to be whole again. I choose you, Xavier Stone. Now and for all moons to come. His answering smile was radiant as he lowered his mouth to her throat. And I choose you, Maya Morganstone. Now and for all moons to come. The claiming bite was both pain and pleasure, both ending and beginning. As Xavier's teeth broke her skin, renewing the bond their wolves had never truly forgotten, Maya felt the final pieces of herself clicking into place. The emptiness that had haunted her for a decade filled with warmth, with connection, with belonging. Outside the sacred den, the wolves of Silver Crest lifted their voices in a unified howl that echoed across the mountains, welcoming their Luna, celebrating their Alpha, acknowledging the completion of a circle broken too long ago. And within the crystal cavern, bathed in moonlight and each other's arms, Maya and Xavier sealed a bond that transcended betrayal, survived separation, and promised a future neither had dared to imagine during their long years apart. The forgotten Omega had become not just the Alpha's only weakness, but his greatest strength, and together, they would build a legacy worthy of the price they had paid to find their way back to each other. Fate has teeth sharper than any wolf's, and sometimes, it chooses to bite twice. Maya learned this truth as she stared at the 5 wolves gathered before Silver Crest's gates, their Alpha's eyes burning with familiar hatred that made her newly healed mate Mark throb with warning. Magnus' son, Xavier murmured beside her, his body tensing as he recognized the young wolf at the front of the small delegation. Alaric. 3 moons had passed since their claiming ceremony, 3 perfect moons of rebuilding Silver Crest, of learning to lead together, of nights spent rediscovering each other and days spent earning the pack's trust. Peace had settled over the territory like a healing balm, until now. Maya's fingers found Xavier's, intertwining with silent support as they watched Alaric approach the gates. Though barely 20, he carried himself with the unmistakable arrogance of blood moon lineage. His eyes, the same calculating amber as his father's, fixed on Maya with undisguised loathing. I come under flag of parley, Alaric announced, his voice carrying to where the Alpha pair stood on the ramparts above. To speak with the usurper who stole my father's honor. Xavier's low growl vibrated through their connected hands. Your father lost his honor when he attacked through deception rather than honorable challenge, he called down. Then perhaps, Alaric replied with a cold smile, you'll appreciate the honesty of my approach now. Maya studied the young Alpha carefully. Something about his confidence disturbed her. He was outnumbered, outmatched, yet showed no fear. His 4 companions were young as well, barely out of adolescence. Not the force one would bring for an attack. What do you want, Alaric? Xavier demanded. The young wolf's smile widened. Justice. Restoration. His gaze shifted deliberately to Maya. Retribution. A chill traced Maya's spine. Unlike his father's calculated plans, Alaric's hatred burned hot and impulsive. Perhaps more dangerous for its unpredictability. Let him enter, she murmured to Xavier. Alone. We should hear what he has to say. Xavier's grip on her hand tightened. He's Magnus' blood. We can't trust him. And I was Magnus' weapon, she reminded him gently. Yet you trust me. Something shifted in Xavier's expression, a softening that still amazed her, this ability to move the implacable Alpha with nothing but words. He nodded once, sharply, before signaling the guards to open the gates. Alaric alone, he commanded. His companions remain outside. The young alpha separated from his small pack, approaching the gates with the unhurried confidence of a predator certain of his advantage. Maya and Xavier descended to meet him in the courtyard, flanked by Leona and two senior warriors. Up close, Alaric's youth was more apparent, his face still holding traces of adolescence despite the hardness in his eyes. Maya felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. He was younger than she had been when Silver Crest cast her out, when she lost everything. "Speak your piece," Xavier said, his voice neutral but his stance protective beside Maya. Alaric's gaze roamed the rebuilt walls of Silver Crest, taking in the strengthened defenses, the new watchtowers, the signs of prosperity returning to the territory. "My father is dying," he said without preamble. The blunt statement hung in the air. Maya felt Xavier's surprise mirroring her own. "The outcast mark you placed on him," Alaric continued, his voice tight with controlled rage, "it's spreading. The magic is consuming him from the inside. The pack healer gives him 1 moon, perhaps less." Xavier's expression remained impassive, though Maya felt the subtle tension in his body. The outcast mark was meant to brand, to shame, not to kill. Something had gone wrong with the ancient magic. "I'm sorry to hear that," Xavier said carefully. "But I fail to see why you've come to Silver Crest with this news." Alaric's laugh was brittle, too old for his young face. "Not for sympathy, I assure you." His eyes fixed on Maya. "I've come with an offer. A trade." Maya's wolf stirred uneasily beneath her skin. "What kind of trade?" "My father possesses knowledge you need," Alaric said, addressing her directly now. "Information about the child you lost, or rather, the child you believe you lost." The world seemed to tilt beneath Maya's feet. Xavier's arm shot out to steady her, his face transformed by shock and dangerous fury. "Choose your next words with extreme care," he warned Alaric, his voice dropping to the deadly quiet that preceded violence. The young alpha appeared unmoved by the threat. "Your enforcers were efficient, Alpha Stone, but not as thorough as your father believed. The child lived." Maya's heart seemed to stop, then restart with painful intensity. "You're lying," she whispered, though something deep inside, the part of her that had never fully accepted her loss, trembled with desperate hope. "Am I?" Alaric reached slowly into his jacket, withdrawing a small leather pouch. He opened it carefully, extracting a delicate silver chain bearing a small crescent moon pendant. Maya's knees nearly buckled. The necklace, her mother's, passed down through generations of her family's females, had been around her neck the night Xavier's father's men had taken her to the forest. The night she'd lost everything. "Where did you get that?" Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "From the neck of a girl who lives in the neutral territories," Alaric replied. "A girl of 9 winters, with eyes the precise blue of your mate's and the stubborn chin of her mother." Xavier moved so quickly that Alaric had no time to react. One moment the young alpha stood smirking before them, the next he was pinned against the stone wall, Xavier's forearm pressed against his throat. "If this is some cruel game," Xavier snarled, his features partially shifting with rage, "I will end your bloodline permanently." Alaric struggled to speak against the pressure on his windpipe. "Not a game," he gasped. "A trade. The child's location, for the cure to my father's condition." Maya approached slowly, her mind struggling to process the possibility that her daughter, their daughter, might be alive. That somewhere, for 9 years, their child had been growing up without them. The thought was simultaneously miraculous and devastating. "Xavier," she said softly, placing her hand on his arm. "Let him speak." With visible effort, Xavier released Alaric, stepping back to Maya's side. The young alpha rubbed his throat, the smirk gone from his face, replaced by wary respect. My father knew, he explained once he'd caught his breath. Not at first. But later, when he found me half dead, he discovered I was pregnant. The enforcers had done their work, I was bleeding, dying, but the child's wolf was strong. Maya's voice shook with emotion. They took her, made it seem she died with the miscarriage, and placed her with a guardian in the neutral territories. Alaric nodded. A former blood moon healer who had fallen from my father's favor. He thought it poetic. To keep the child as leverage, should he ever need it. Xavier's rage was a palpable force, his body trembling with the effort to maintain control. And now Magnus uses her from his deathbed. Still manipulating. Still destroying. He's dying because of you, Alaric countered. The outcast mark, something went wrong with the ritual. Perhaps because of your mate Bond's unusual strength, perhaps because of his age. The magic is devouring him from within. Maya's mind raced ahead. And he knows how to reverse it. Alaric inclined his head. Ancient blood magic. He was researching it before his defeat. He discovered the counterspell, but it requires the one who casts the mark to willingly remove it. And in exchange, Xavier said, his voice tight with controlled emotion, he offers information about our daughter. Her exact location, Alaric confirmed. The name she knows. The people who have raised her believing she was an orphan pack child. Maya's heart constricted painfully. 9 years. 9 birthdays she'd missed. 9 winters without knowing her child's favorite color, favorite food, favorite story. The grief of what they'd lost, what had been stolen, threatened to overwhelm her. But beneath the grief, something else stirred. Wolf-fierce maternal instinct, long suppressed, now awakening with devastating force. Her child was alive. Her child could be found. We need to discuss this privately, Xavier said to Alaric, his tone making it clear the conversation was temporarily concluded. The young alpha nodded, seeming almost relieved to step back from the emotional intensity radiating from the mated pair. I'll await your decision. My companions and I will camp at the territory border. After Alaric was escorted back to the gates, Xavier led Maya swiftly through Silver Crest's halls to their private chambers. The moment the door closed behind them, he pulled her into his arms, his body shaking. If he's lying, Xavier whispered against her hair, if this is some twisted revenge. It's not, Maya interrupted, certainty filling her voice. The necklace, Xavier. It was my mother's. I was wearing it that night. She pulled back enough to meet his gaze, her hands framing his face. She has your eyes. Your chin. Xavier closed his eyes, pain and wonder battling across his features. A daughter, he breathed. Our daughter. Alive all this time. The reality of it crashed over them both, the miracle and the horror intertwined. Their child had survived, but had been raised without them, without knowledge of her true heritage, her true pack. We have to find her, Maya said, her voice steadying with determination. Whatever it takes. Xavier's eyes opened, revealing the alpha calculation returning beneath the emotional storm. Even if it means saving the wolf who nearly destroyed us? He's already dying, Maya pointed out. What matters is our daughter. For a long moment, Xavier was silent, his thumbs tracing gentle circles on her wrists as he considered their options. There's another way, he finally said. A way to verify Alaric's claim before we make any deal with Magnus. Maya's heart leapt. How? The mate bond, Xavier explained. It connects us, but it would also connect us to our child, faintly perhaps, given the distance and her age, but it would be there. If she truly lives. We could feel her, Maya finished, understanding illuminating her face. Through the bond. Xavier nodded. It would require deep meditation, accessing the most primal level of our connection. Something only true mates could achieve. Maya's hand slid from his face to his chest, resting over his heart. Then we try. Now. The ritual was ancient, rarely performed but embedded in pack knowledge passed through generations. They arranged themselves in the center of their chamber, seated face to face, knees touching, hands clasped between them. Focus on my heartbeat, Xavier instructed softly. Then on your own. Feel them synchronize. Maya closed her eyes, concentrating on the strong, steady thud beneath her palm where it rested on Xavier's chest. Her own heart initially raced with anticipation, with hope and fear tangled together, but gradually it slowed, falling into rhythm with his. Now extend your awareness, he continued, his voice dropping lower, becoming almost hypnotic. Follow the bond outward, beyond our bodies, beyond Silver Crest. The mate bond visualized itself differently for each wolf pair. For Maya, it had always appeared as a silver cord, unbreakable, luminous, connecting her soul to Xavier's. As she sank deeper into the meditative state, that cord materialized in her mind's eye, pulsing with their shared heartbeat. Beside her, Xavier's breathing changed, deepening as he too accessed the bond's metaphysical manifestation. His free hand found hers, their fingers intertwining as they traveled together along the silver pathway of their connection. There, he whispered after what might have been minutes or hours. Do you feel it? And she did, a second, much thinner silver cord, branching off from their main bond. It stretched away into darkness, pulsing with a faster, lighter rhythm. A child's heartbeat. She's alive, Maya gasped, tears streaming down her face though her eyes remained closed, focused on the miraculous vision. Xavier, she's alive. The delicate secondary bond shimmered as they focused on it together, growing slightly brighter, slightly stronger. Somewhere, miles away, their daughter's wolf would be stirring, sensing something she couldn't yet understand. She feels us, Xavier said wonderingly. Her wolf recognizes us, even if she doesn't know why. They lingered in the connection as long as they could sustain it, both reluctant to break this first tenuous contact with their lost child. But eventually, the demands of their physical bodies pulled them back to awareness, the vision of the bond fading as they opened their eyes to find themselves still seated on the floor of their chambers, hands clasped between them, faces wet with tears. She's alive, Maya repeated, the words still miraculous. Our daughter is alive. Xavier raised their joined hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. And we're going to find her, he promised. We're going to bring her home. The decision was made in that moment, without need for further discussion. They would do whatever was necessary, even saving the enemy who had nearly destroyed them, to reclaim their child. As dawn approached, they summoned the pack's inner circle to the council chamber. Leona, the elder, and their most trusted warriors gathered around the ancient table, faces concerned as they sensed the emotional turmoil radiating from their alpha pair. Alaric spoke true, Xavier announced without preamble. Our daughter lives. The reaction was immediate, gasps, murmurs of disbelief, then a rising tide of righteous anger as the implications became clear. Silver Crest had been robbed not just of its alpha's mate but of his heir as well. We've confirmed it through the mate bond, Maya added, her voice steady despite the emotion churning beneath. She's alive, in the neutral territories. And Magnus uses her as leverage, Leona concluded, her expression darkening. Even dying, he plays his games. The elder approached Maya slowly, her blind eyes somehow finding Maya's face with unerring accuracy. She reached up, her weathered hands cupping Maya's cheeks. "The circle completes," she murmured. "The lost returns. Silver Crest's true heir comes home." "We haven't found her yet," Maya reminded her gently. The elder's smile was knowing. "But you will. The bond has awakened. She feels you now, as you feel her. Moon to moon, blood to blood, the call has begun." Xavier stepped forward, addressing the council with the calm authority that had made him a respected alpha. "We leave for Blood Moon territory at midday. Maya and I alone. The rest of you will maintain Silver Crest's defenses in our absence." Protests rose immediately, but Xavier silenced them with a raised hand. "This is not open for debate. Magnus is dying, no longer a threat. His knowledge is our daughter's location. We will not risk a larger party that might be perceived as an attack force. And if it's a trap?" Leona challenged, loyal enough to question her alpha when necessary. "Then we spring it," Maya replied simply. "Together." As the council reluctantly accepted their decision, making preparations for their departure, Xavier drew Maya to a quiet alcove away from the others. His hand found the mate mark on her neck, fingers tracing its raised edges with infinite tenderness. "When I gave you this mark at 17, he said quietly, I couldn't possibly understand what it would mean. How it would save us both, eventually. How it would lead us to our child." Maya leaned into his touch, her own fingers finding the matching mark on his neck. "The circle completes," she echoed the elder's words. "What was broken is mended. What was lost is found." Xavier's forehead came to rest against hers, their breathing synchronizing just as it had during the ritual. "We're going to bring her home, Maya," he vowed. "And this time, nothing, not Magnus, not death itself, will separate what belongs together." As they stood there, foreheads touching, hearts beating in unison, the thin silver connection to their daughter pulsed in their shared awareness, growing stronger with each moment, calling them forward into an uncertain future that held their greatest hope and deepest fear. The forgotten Omega had become not just the Alpha's only weakness but his greatest strength. And together, they would reclaim the final piece of their broken circle, the child born of a love strong enough to survive betrayal, separation, and even death itself. Some bonds transcend flesh and blood, they live in the spaces between heartbeats, in dreams before waking, in the wild magic of recognition that needs no introduction. As the small girl with midnight hair and glacier blue eyes lifted her head from gathering herbs, her entire body went still, her gaze fixed on the forest edge where two strangers emerged from shadow into sunlight. "Luna," she whispered, the name rising unbidden to her lips though she had never spoken it before. 3 days had passed since Maya and Xavier had departed Silver Crest, following the tenuous silver thread of their bond across territories and boundaries. Their journey to Blood Moon lands had been swift but tense. Magnus lay dying in his chambers, the outcast mark spreading like dark poison through his veins, stealing his strength hour by hour. The ritual to remove the mark had been somber, without triumph or vengeance. Xavier had performed the ancient counterspell with steady hands and a heart focused not on the enemy who lay before him but on the daughter they had yet to find. Magnus had given them a map marked with a single X, a remote valley in the neutral territories where their daughter had been hidden for 9 years. Luna hesitated only briefly before stepping into her mother's embrace. The moment their bodies connected, the bond between them flared to brilliant life, no longer the tenuous silver thread they had followed, but a pulsing, vibrant connection. Maya felt Xavier kneel beside them, his arms encircling them both, completing the circle of their family for the first time. The three of them remained that way for what seemed like eternity and no time at all. "Alpha," Omega, and the child born of their union, their wolves recognizing each other on a level that transcended their human understanding. When they finally separated, Luna's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but her smile was radiant. "I'm ready to go home now," she announced with the decisive clarity of one who had been waiting for this moment her entire life. Grandmother Willow watched the reunion with misted eyes. "She has waited for this day," she told Maya and Xavier. "Though she has been loved here, her wolf has always yearned for her true pack." Xavier approached the elderly healer, bowing his head in a gesture of profound respect. "You have given us a gift beyond measure," he said. "Blood Moon cast you out, and still you protected our child with your life. Silver Crest owes you a debt that can never be repaid." The old woman's laugh was surprisingly youthful. "Seeing that child united with her true parents is payment enough." Her expression grew serious. "But there is something you should know before you take her. Luna is no ordinary wolf child." Maya looked up from where she was helping Luna gather the spilled herbs. "What do you mean?" "From her earliest days, she has shown abilities unusual in one so young," Grandmother Willow explained. "She can sense emotions in others, wolf and human alike. She dreams of events before they occur. And when the moon is full." The healer paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "When the moon is full, she can call to other wolves across great distances." Xavier and Maya exchanged glances, understanding passing between them. The Alpha-Omega pairing was rare enough, but a child born of such a union, conceived under a claiming moon and born during another, would carry unique gifts. "A moon singer," Xavier murmured, naming an almost mythical designation among wolf kind. "Not seen in the Northern Territories for 5 generations." Grandmother Willow nodded solemnly. "She will need guidance that goes beyond even what her Alpha father and Omega mother can provide. Her gifts will only grow stronger as she approaches maturity." Maya's protective instincts surged. "We'll find the teaching she needs," she promised. "Our elder has extensive knowledge of the old ways. And Silver Crest's library contains scrolls dating back to the first pack," Xavier added. "Whatever guidance she needs, we will ensure she receives it." Luna, seemingly untroubled by the weight of expectations being placed on her young shoulders, tugged at Xavier's hand. "Can I shift into my wolf when we get home?" she asked, excitement brightening her features. "Grandmother only lets me do it on full moons because she says it's not safe here." Xavier's expression softened as he looked down at their daughter. "Silver Crest has running grounds that stretch for miles," he told her. "You can shift whenever your wolf calls to you." The joy that bloomed across Luna's face was worth every moment of pain they had endured to find her. As she darted back to the cottage to gather her few belongings, Maya and Xavier faced Grandmother Willow once more. "Come with us," Maya urged the elderly healer. "Silver Crest would welcome your wisdom, your healing skills." But Grandmother Willow shook her head, smiling gently. "My time in Packlands is done," she said. "I have found my peace here, among the neutrals. But perhaps—" her eyes twinkled with mischief. "Perhaps when Luna is old enough to begin her formal moon singer training, she might visit her old grandmother from time to time. We would never separate her from someone she loves," Xavier promised. "Our pack's borders will always be open to you." As Luna returned, a small pack clutched in her arms and excitement evident in her bouncing steps, Maya felt the final piece of her heart slide into place. The family that had been torn apart by duty, ambition, and cruelty was reuniting, changed by their years apart, but stronger for having found their way back to each other. The journey back to Silver Crest was filled with Luna's endless questions about the pack, about her parents' lives, about the home she had never known but somehow remembered in her bones. With each mile that brought them closer to Packlands, the bond between the three of them strengthened, their wolves singing to each other across the space between heartbeats. On the final night of their journey, they camped beneath the stars, Luna nestled between them as Xavier recounted the ancient stories of their kind, tales of the first pack, of the Great Migration, of the founding of Silver Crest centuries before. Maya watched their daughter's rapt expression as she absorbed her heritage, filling in the spaces that had been left empty in her understanding of herself. "And what about your story?" Luna asked as the fire burned low. "How did you meet? How did you find each other again?" Maya's eyes met Xavier's across their daughter's curious face. How to explain the complexities of their journey to a child of 9? The betrayals, the manipulations, the years of separation and pain? "It's a long story," Xavier began carefully. "The important part," Maya continued, smoothing Luna's dark hair, "is that we never truly lost each other. Even when we were apart, something connected us." "The bond," Luna said matter-of-factly. "Like the one I feel with you both." Xavier smiled. "Exactly like that. And no matter what happened, no matter how far apart we were, we found our way back," Maya finished. "Just like we found you." Luna considered this with the solemn intensity that reminded Maya so much of Xavier. "And now no one can separate us again," she declared, not a question but a statement of absolute certainty. "No one," Xavier confirmed, his hand finding Maya's over their daughter's head, their fingers intertwining in silent promise. "We are pack. We are family. We are forever." As Luna drifted to sleep between them, secure in the absolute safety of her parents' presence, Maya and Xavier kept watch, their eyes meeting in the firelight. No words were needed between them, the bond carried everything their voices could not: gratitude for what they had recovered, determination to protect it, and love so profound it transcended the limitations of language. The moon rose above them, full and watchful, bathing the small family in silver light. And as if responding to its ancient call, Luna smiled in her sleep, her small hand reaching out to grasp her mother's while her head nestled more securely against her father's chest. The forgotten Omega had become the Alpha's strength. The lost child had been found. The circle, broken for so long, was complete at last. And as the moon continued its journey across the night sky, it carried with it the promise of a new dawn, for the child who would one day lead, for the parents who had defied fate to find each other again, and for the pack that awaited their return. In the quiet of the wilderness, 3 wolves, 2 grown, one still finding her way, breathed in unison, their hearts beating to the same ancient rhythm that had guided their kind since the first shift. Together at last, bound by blood and choice and love that had proven stronger than any force that had tried to tear them apart. Family. Pack. Home. Forever. Sometimes eternity fits in a single moment, a perfect breath suspended between past and future, where all wounds heal and all promises find fulfillment. For Maya, that moment arrived on a winter solstice night 5 years after bringing Luna home, as she watched her maiden daughter race through moonlit snow, their wolf forms casting blue-silver shadows across pristine white. The Alpha and his heir. The father and his child. The 2 pieces of Maya's heart running wild and free beneath the year's longest night. Silver Crest had transformed in the 5 years since Luna's return, not just physically, with new structures and strengthened defenses, but spiritually. The presence of a moon singer had awakened ancient magics long dormant in the territory. The springs ran clearer, the forests grew denser, the bonds between packmates strengthened. And at the center of this renaissance stood Luna, now 14, her gifts blossoming as she approached the threshold between childhood and maturity. Tonight marked a significant milestone, Luna's first winter solstice hunt as a recognized pack member. At 14, she was officially old enough to join the adult wolves in the sacred ritual that would carry them from the year's darkest night into the promise of returning light. Maya remained in human form, wrapped in furs at the edge of the great clearing. As Luna's mother and the pack's Luna, she would perform her own essential role in the ceremony later. For now, she savored the sight of Xavier teaching their daughter the intricate patterns of the solstice run, figure eights and spirals that mimicked the sun's journey through seasons. Xavier's wolf was magnificent, massive and powerful, with fur as black as midnight save for the silver markings across his chest that denoted his alpha status. Beside him, Luna's smaller form moved with uncanny grace, her coat a perfect blend of her parents', midnight black like her father's but with silver tips that caught the moonlight with every movement, creating the illusion that she ran wrapped in stars. As Maya watched them, a familiar presence settled beside her on the stone bench overlooking the clearing. She performs the patterns as if born knowing them, the elder observed, her blind eyes somehow still tracking Luna's movements. The old blood runs strong in her. Maya smiled, offering the elder a cup of the spiced wine traditionally shared during the solstice celebration. Sometimes I wonder if she remembers more than she says, if some part of her wolf retained knowledge even while we were separated. The elder sipped the warm wine, nodding thoughtfully. Moon singers exist partially outside of time as we understand it. Their wolves perceive the world differently. Her weathered hand found Maya's, squeezing gently. You've done well with her. Both of you. The praise warmed Maya more than the wine. The years of Luna's integration into Silver Crest had not been without challenges. A child raised in isolation among neutrals suddenly thrust into the complex hierarchy of pack life. A moon singer learning to control abilities that manifested in unexpected, sometimes frightening ways. Parents learning to guide a daughter they'd missed the first 9 years of knowing. Yet they had faced each challenge together, the three of them bound by something deeper than blood, stronger than duty. Look, the elder murmured, drawing Maya's attention back to the clearing. Xavier and Luna had completed the traditional patterns and now stood motionless in the center of the snow-covered space. As Maya watched, Luna threw back her head and released a howl unlike any other in the pack, clear and pure, with harmonic overtones that seemed to vibrate through the very stones beneath them. The moon singer's call. From every direction, answering howls rose in response, first the Silver Crest wolves participating in the hunt, then more distant voices from neighboring friendly packs, and finally, faintly, the wild wolves of the deep forest. Luna's gift allowed her to bridge the gap between pack wolves and their wild cousins, calling to something primordial that resided in all of them. Maya felt the familiar pride mixed with awe that always accompanied displays of Luna's abilities. The power their daughter wielded with increasing confidence would someday make her one of the most significant alpha females in pack history, not just because of her lineage but because of her unique gifts. As the howls faded, Xavier nudged Luna with his massive head, signaling her to return to the gathering area. The hunt would begin soon, once the rituals were complete. Maya stood, straightening the ceremonial robes she wore as Luna. "It's time," she said to the elder. "Will you join us at the sacred fire?" The elder rose with surprising agility for one of her advanced years. "I wouldn't miss Luna's first solstice ceremony. Not when I've waited 5 centuries to see a moon singer perform the blessing." Maya raised an eyebrow. 5 centuries? You can't possibly be. The elder's laugh interrupted her, mischievous and youthful despite her appearance. Perhaps a slight exaggeration. But some of us do remember the old stories more clearly than others. Together they made their way to the sacred fire pit at the center of Silver Crest's ceremonial grounds. The entire pack had gathered, some in wolf form, others human, all dressed in their finest for the year's most significant spiritual celebration. Xavier and Luna had shifted back to human form and now stood waiting, both wrapped in ceremonial furs. Xavier's eyes found Maya's across the gathering, communicating volumes without words, pride in their daughter, gratitude for their shared life, love that had only deepened with each passing year. As Maya took her place beside them, completing the ceremonial triangle of Alpha, Luna, and Air, a hush fell over the assembled pack. The winter stars blazed overhead, and the moon, nearly full, cast enough light to illuminate every face turned expectantly toward the fire pit. On the longest night, Xavier began, his voice carrying easily to every ear, we honor the darkness that teaches us patience. On the longest night, Maya continued, taking up the traditional response, we kindle the flame that promises light's return. All eyes turned to Luna, who stepped forward with perfect confidence. Though only 14, she carried herself with the natural dignity of one born to lead. The silver streaks in her dark hair, unusual in one so young, caught the firelight, creating a halo effect around her solemn face. On the longest night, she said, her voice clear and strong, I call to the wolves of past and present, of pack and wild, to join in the sacred hunt that bridges dark and light, death and life, ending and beginning. The traditional words, spoken by the pack's heir for generations, took on new resonance coming from a moon singer. Luna raised her hands toward the fire pit, and without touching the kindling, caused flames to leap into existence, another manifestation of her unique abilities. A murmur of appreciation rippled through the gathered wolves. Even after 5 years, Luna's gifts still inspired awe. Maya felt Xavier's hand find hers, squeezing gently as they watched their daughter perform the ancient rituals with flawless precision. When the ceremonial fire burned strong and steady, Luna turned to face the pack. The path is lit, she announced. The way is clear. Let the solstice hunt begin. The air filled with the sounds of shifting, bones realigning, fur emerging, as those participating in the hunt transformed into their wolf forms. Xavier kissed Maya briefly before stepping back to join them, his body flowing seamlessly into his wolf form. Luna turned to Maya, eyes bright with excitement and ceremony. May I be excused from the blessing circle, Mother? Father says I'm ready to run with the hunters this year. Maya's heart constricted with the bittersweet joy of watching her child grow into her power. Traditionally, young wolves didn't join the hunt until 16, but Luna was no ordinary wolf. You're ready, Maya confirmed, brushing a strand of silver-streaked hair from her daughter's face. Run well. Run safe. The moon watches over you. Luna's smile was radiant as she pressed her forehead briefly against Maya's in the gesture of wolf affection they'd shared since her first day at Silver Crest. Then she stepped back, shifting with the natural grace that characterized everything she did. Maya watched as Xavier led the hunting party into the forest, Luna running confidently at his side, the other wolves arranged in formation behind them. Pride swelled in her chest, so intense it was almost painful. From forgotten mate to Luna of Silver Crest. From childless to mother of a moon singer. From exiled Omega to half of the most powerful alpha pair in the Northern Territories. The path had been brutal, lined with betrayal and loss, but the destination was worth every step. As the wolf pack disappeared into the darkness, Maya turned to the remaining pack members, those too young, too old, or otherwise unsuited to the hunt. As Luna, she would lead them in the blessing circle, the ritual that would sustain the pack's spiritual strength during the hunt. Hours later, as the first hint of dawn lightened the eastern sky, Maya stood alone at Silver Crest's highest watchtower. The hunters would return soon, carrying their ritual prey, a white stag if the omens were favorable. She had completed her duties with the blessing circle and now awaited her family's return. The sound of footsteps on the stone stairs behind her was familiar enough that she didn't turn. Xavier's arms wrapped around her waist, his chest warm against her back despite the winter chill. Successful hunt? She asked, leaning into his embrace. Beyond all expectations, he murmured, pressing a kiss to the side of her neck where his mate Mark resided. Luna tracked the white stag. The youngest wolf to ever do so. Maya turned in his arms, searching his face. Truly? She found it? Xavier's smile was radiant with pride. Found it, honored it, and led the pack in the Thanksgiving rituals as if she'd been doing it her entire life. He brushed a lock of hair from Maya's face, his touch lingering. The pack elders are calling it a sign. Another one? Maya laughed softly. Their daughter's life had been filled with signs and portents since her return to Silver Crest. What does this one foretell? A golden age, Xavier replied, his voice taking on the formal tone he used for pack prophecies. A time of alliance rather than division. Luna will be the alpha who unites the northern packs as they haven't been united since the time of the first pack. Maya's breath caught. Such a destiny would place enormous responsibility on their daughter's shoulders, yet another weight for one already carrying the burden of her Moonsinger gifts. Xavier seemed to read her thoughts. She's ready for whatever comes, he assured her. We've made certain of it. Where is she now? Maya asked. Celebrating with the young wolves, Xavier replied. Being 14 as well as heir apparent and a Moonsinger. His smile turned tender. She insisted I come find you. Said we deserve some time alone while she handles her alpha training duties. Maya laughed. She's matchmaking for her own parents? She worries we don't take enough time for ourselves. Xavier's arms tightened around her. Perhaps she has a point. The responsibilities of leading Silver Crest, raising Luna, and navigating the complex politics of pack alliances often left little time for just the two of them. Yet through it all, their bond had only strengthened, each challenge faced together deepening their connection in ways neither could have imagined during their years apart. I love you, Maya said simply, the words carrying the weight of everything they'd overcome. Now. Always. Forever. Xavier's response was to capture her lips with his, the kiss deepening instantly as the mate bond flared between them, as powerful now as it had been on the night of their claiming ceremony. His hands tangled in her hair as hers gripped the front of his ceremonial tunic, both suddenly desperate for closer contact. Our quarters, he murmured against her mouth. Now. Maya laughed breathlessly. The pack is celebrating. And our daughter has things well in hand. His eyes, now tinged with alpha red, held both desire and tenderness. Come to bed, Luna. Let me remind you how thoroughly you are loved. As they made their way through the quiet corridors of Silver Crest's main hall, Maya reflected on the journey that had led them here. From childhood companions to secret teenage lovers. From separated mates to bitter enemies. From reluctant allies to partners in leadership. From broken to healed. From lost to found. The forgotten Omega had become the Alpha's strength, his heart, his home. And together, they had created not just a family but a legacy that would reshape the future of all wolfkind through their extraordinary daughter. As the first rays of solstice dawn broke across Silver Crest, Maya and Xavier celebrated their private ritual of reconnection, two souls bound by a love powerful enough to overcome betrayal, separation, and even time itself. Their happily ever after, hard-won and precious, unfolding with each shared heartbeat beneath the watchful eyes of the rising sun.